You're watching Chronicle Chamber. My name is Scott, the U.S. reviewer over here, and today we're going to talk about Defenders of the Earth trade publication published by Mad Cave Studios. Let's check it out. This trade paperback has a beautiful new cover. You can tell it has a very modern comic style here, and that's important for me to point out because, for fans who aren't aware, this is a reprint of the 4-issue miniseries put out by Marvel Comics in 1987 to correspond with the cartoon show that was running on TV at the time. As the show had a hand by Stan Lee in getting its development up and going, so too does this miniseries. As we open it up and take a peek inside, here's some classic comic art, that feels more like what the book actually feels like. And you can see Stan Lee's name big and bold right at the top here, with Bob Harras and Michael Higgins on the writing team. Now, Stan Lee and Bob Harras co-write the first issue, but the rest of the 3 issues in here are all written by Michael Higgins. Alex Saviuk does the pencils. You have Fredericks come in for some cover work and some inking and penciling. And then you have Nell Yomtov for coloring. And we get into here. We open it up. We have the original covers on display, for each issue. Beautiful, very well drawn, very detailed. That's one of the things that's the strength of this trade paperback, is that the level of detail and attentiveness is kind of out of this world. And I say that intentionally as a pun because this book starts with Flash Gordon crashing back to Earth. Here's Mandrake the Magician and Lothar running to the rescue going, what happened? And we get a story of what Flash Gordon's been doing. He's running from Ming the Merciless. He barely escaped. And so now he's come to Earth, and he needs to get back to Mongo, which is where Ming the Merciless is from, to save his wife and his son, who are being held captive by Ming. Garrix enters the fray here. There's some battling. We see Ming. And much like the cartoon series, if you ever watched the pilot, this follows it and hits pretty much all the beats. We get origins of who these people are. Very quick, brief intros. Here's the Phantom. Here's kind of the origin of the Phantom, in panel or two. It's very quick, but it's Kit Walker, and he talks about the lineage and who the Phantom is. We see the Skull Cave. But what's happening here is while Ming is torturing Dale Arden, Flash Gordon's wife, and Rick Gordon is trying to save his mother, you have Flash Gordon and Mandrake putting together their team with Lothar and Phantom to go and fight Ming and stop him from menacing the galaxy. And just like the cartoon, the Phantom does have his power of 10 tigers, which he calls on several times throughout this miniseries. So if you liked it in the cartoon, you'll like it here. And the story, in the language, because it is co-written by Stan Lee, it very much has that lyrical, boisterous, loud quality that he brought to everything he did. It very much feels like a Stan Lee comic. And I mean that in a compliment. He was a very fun writer. And it works well with this artwork that has very old school aesthetics going on here. It's very, it embraces the look and feel of the cartoon, but it also feels like a Silver Age comic book, even though it's not necessarily one. At the end of the first issue, we see the Defenders formed, and this feeds right into issue 2. And so really what's going on here is, if you've watched the pilot episode for Defenders of the Earth, they've sort of broken that first episode into 2 issues here. And they really take their time with the story. As what happens in the cartoon happens in the book, Dale Arden dies and her consciousness goes into the Dynac X computer. In a lot of issue 2, when they're not fighting Ming the Merciless and he's not busy building his base in the Antarctic, they're building their own Defenders headquarters and kind of getting all the chess pieces in play. These first 2 issues do a lot of world building and groundwork for the Defenders of the Earth, which is interesting to see, and if you like that sort of thing, it can be fun. However, since the series was canceled after 4 issues initially, it kind of seems all for naught. But the artwork remains consistently beautiful throughout the entire 4-issue run. Alex Saviuk does a fantastic job with the pencils and the line work. All the characters look very real, and there's very real, raw emotions on their faces at times. And it really fits nicely in this very magical, futuristic world that's going on here. As you can see with the colors and the level of detail, there is a lot going on in each single panel. Michael Higgins, as I noted earlier, takes over writing duties, and his writing is good, but I will warn readers that if you're reading the new Defenders of the Earth series, written by Dan DiDio and Jim Calafiore, this is a little bit different. Whereas the new series is kind of aimed at an older audience, perhaps people who grew up with the cartoon, this series, the language is aged down a little bit. So it's very functional most of the way through, and it's written in a way that younger readers can kind of understand what's going on. They're very literal and plain with their language, so you know each beat and you're not getting lost in the story, because there is a lot going on, as I mentioned, but also it's for the kids to fully grasp what is going on here. For Phantom fans, issue 3 is probably the most important issue here. This is a solo adventure with Phantom and Jeddah. I should note where Phantom has his Strength of 10 Tigers ability, Jeddah has telepathy. And that sort of weaves in and out in the story. They mention it, they don't really do much with it. But, you see the Bandar tribe, you see Kurt Walker, who is the brother of Kit in this storyline, and Kurt is also his villain, and Dama, which is like a weather spirit demon type of creature. This character was in the early episodes of the Defenders of the Earth, introduced pretty early on, and was kind of the Phantom's main foe. And that's what they're capturing here. And like I noted, a lot of these things are all in the cartoon, but this does try to hit beats a little differently. It's not exactly just the cartoon in paper form. It does its own thing. It tries to create its own world and keep plot lines running in the background of all these, one-shot adventures that happen in the back half of this trade paperback. So Ming is always up to something. We see him usually at least once per issue, if he's not the main focus. But like this last issue in the book, whereas we had Phantom for number 3, we have Mandrake the Magician as the focus of the 4th and final issue here. And it goes into his origin, how he found Kashin, which is his child that he's taken in, he's teaching magic. And then we learn about his archenemy, Dr. Dark. And if this artwork and this style starts to look a little familiar, that's, I don't think that's a surprise. I feel like, especially with like this panel right here, they're trying to go for a Jack Kirby classic Doctor Strange vibe. I should note that Mandrake the Magician was created way before Doctor Strange, but this art style feels very much like a 60s Doctor Strange adventure. It's very colorful, and it's kind of sky's the limit when they go into the magical realm in terms of what you can do and what you can play with. And that makes this storyline particularly fun to read, because it's just, as you can see, it's very crazy. A lot going on there. Very colorful too. And like I said, this is the beautiful thing about this book, is the Mad Cave team, when they came in here and they republished these, they used nice paper, they brought out the colors, they really made it pop. And they made this the best looking book they could. If it's not for the classic style and feel of all the panels, this would feel, the colors look very bright and vivid and they pop, and it's very beautiful. So like I said, this is the 4th and final issue. And that's the problem with this series. For people who are going into this expecting a complete storyline, you're not going to get it. And there's actually an editor's note at the bottom of the final page, because there's a lot of story threads and plot threads that were, being put together and assembled in this book. And they didn't get to finish it because the series was canceled. So Mad Cave did put an editor's note in that final page. And one can hope that a lot of these threads will be picked up by Dan DiDio and Jim Calafiore for their new Defenders of the Earth series. And it seems like that way. If you've read the new first issue, there are certain things and certain moments referenced that are callbacks to this book. So it's worth reading this in tandem with the new series. And, jumping on it sooner rather than later might be more fun, because then you could probably get a framework for what's coming ahead and what, the new creative team might play with. But all in all, this is a fun trade paperback. It retails for $9.99 in the United States. Very colorful, very well put together. A lot of love was put into making this volume a nice, beautiful book to put on your shelves or flip through. You know, and the only shortcoming really is the writing and the story is meant for younger audiences and is probably best shared with a family. However, if you like the art, you know, it's a beautiful book to flip through. Thank you for watching. You've been watching Chronicle Chamber. If you want to see more Phantom reviews, Defenders of the Earth reviews, you can check out chroniclechamber.com. Furthermore, if you'd like to see more from me personally, you can check out scottwaldenwrites.com or find me on Threads at writer_Scott. Thanks. Bye.